Hi everyone, this is Jody Grinwald and welcome to the Today is the Day Changemakers, and for those of you who are watching on the YouTube channel. We're so excited that this week we are launching the first ever Inspire series. That means that 2 podcasts will be coming out in 1 week. On Monday, March 1st, my guest is Dennis Budinich. He is the Chief Culture Officer at Investors Bank. Dennis shares about hope and happiness and optimism, and there are so many lessons that he shares as he tells us more about his journey to where he is today. And then for the very first time, I will have a co-host. And Dennis will be my guest co-host as together we interview Rob Scheer. Rob is the founder of Comfort Cases, a 2018 CNN hero. He has also launched a book. He is the author of an incredible book about his life and his story and his journey. And when you hear from him, you'll see that his greatest title is Dad. So I hope that you will take a moment to listen to both interviews. Truly incredible. If you want to be inspired, and that's why it's called the Inspire series, then listen in. I hope you continue to subscribe, to like, and to share, as the messages that we're trying to share with you are important for all to listen to. Have a great day. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Today is the Day Changemakers. I am always so honored to bring amazing guests on who can share with you amazing stories about their journey and the things that they're doing each and every day to make this world a better place. Today, I have someone who I adore, Dennis Budinich, with me. He is an amazing change maker, and I want to read just a little bit about his bio, and then he's going to share a lot about his story. But he is a member of the National Speakers Association and has been a speaker for numerous corporate events and at industry conferences across the country. He is the Chief Culture Officer at Investors Bank and has a long list of accolades of where he has appeared and things that he has done. So Dennis, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. This is exciting.
I'm super excited. And, you know, it's funny how kind of the evolution of us meeting actually happened. So just a really quick background here. Dennis and I met when I was working as a director for the community YMCA. And Dennis, you were, I guess, touring around going to some of the YMCAs, right?
Yep.
And I had just not too long before that finished my coaching certification. I became a certified professional coach. And I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And you stood up in front of the room and you took us all on this amazing journey. And I totally connected and said, oh my gosh, I have to go and meet him. And I'll never forget feeling like nervous, like, why is he going to want to talk to me? You know what I mean? He goes and does these things all over the place. So he's going to look at me. I'm going to go up to him and say, hey, you know, I'd really like to have a chat with you. Would you be willing to meet with me to talk a little bit more about, because what you just did, I totally connected with. And I want to do what you do. And you were so unbelievably gracious. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So I can't imagine how many of those you have done throughout the years. I don't know. You probably haven't counted how many speeches you've given.
No, I tried to. My business partner and I, before I joined the bank, tried to calculate it out. It's probably close to 300, 350. You know, so it's a lot of fun. A lot of fun getting in front of people and sharing your heart and sharing what you believe to be true and having people nod their head and say, hey, I agree with that. That's a lot of fun. It's so as a child, I wanted to be a rock star.
Really?
But I can't sing and I can't play an instrument. So this is a part of that dream, is getting up in front of the audience and entertaining them and giving them something to rock about. And so I do it through the presentation. So I'm living out my rock star dream, I guess, you know, so yeah, it's good.
It's so funny because I've heard that before, that, you know, there are some people out there that weren't born with, like, my dad was an opera singer, my kids, as you know, they perform,
Yep.
And it skipped a generation, so I can't do anything. And so same, I guess this is how I'm putting out my rock star right here.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Right. We'll find a way to get up on stage.
We will. But let me ask you this. So how were you as a child? Were you on the shyer side, or were you always, you know, gregarious? And
No, I was very, very intimidated by school. I didn't like going to school because I felt everyone was smarter and, you know, and all that. So I was very intimidated by school. In fact, in fifth grade, I went to a Catholic school, and in fifth grade, I could say now that I am honored to be the first one in that school to be ever left back. No one's ever been left back in that Catholic school for the history of the school. I mean, they just push people forward. But I was so intimidated by going to school that I took off so many days that they left me back. And that was actually a great experience for me, because going back to school the next year, they had a new principal who took me under her wing, a nun. And she said, come on, you come back to school, you hang out with me, and I'll make you comfortable. And that's what she did. And so by eighth grade, I was the school president. So I went from being intimidated to, and that actually changed my life. That whole kind of evolution of having someone recognize that here's a person that needs to be taken care of. She took care of me, and it just changed my whole life.
You know, that's such a great point, because I think that's what we all need in life, no matter how old we are. It's that person who says, I believe in you.
Yeah.
And I can help you. And that, and you know, the thing is even when we met, and me going up to you, even though I was in my 40s at the time, I said, I want to be like you. I want to be able to take people on that journey and watch them grow and have their aha moments, but I don't know how to do it as good as you. So will you share some of that great information with me? And I'll never forget that you brought books to one of our first meetings to say, here, read these books, because this is going to help you. But you took the time to figure out which books, you thought about it. Everybody, I think, needs that person in their life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's interesting because, you know, the more we share, the more we have to give, right? The more we give, the more we're given to give, right? And so, especially in business and in life, if we give people what they want, some way, shape, or form, it comes back. It may not come directly from the person that we help, but the universe pays back, right? And so if we do good things happen. So I believe that it's happened over and over again. So very generous with my time, my assets, whatever I know, I'll share. And that's it. Yeah.
And you do. I vouch for that. And I've been lucky to have amazing mentors throughout my life. And I think you're never too old to have a mentor or someone to.
Of course.
To.
Yeah.
Let's go back just a little bit. Where did you start? So you eighth grade, you did great. You graduated. You became the president of the class. And then, so when you left school and you were done with schooling, so where did you start your career?
So I went to high school and realized that, I don't know if I'm ready for, well, I didn't have the finances for college. I didn't have a mindset for college, and I didn't have the confidence of learning at that level. So I had confidence in myself, but I didn't have confidence as being a good student, because I never was a good student. I never read books. I never read a book. And now all I do is read books. But back then I never read a book. And so I just went right to work. I just started working and hustling and that's it. Just so I went to high school, just about got out. You know, it was almost like a favor. Just leave, just go. We'll put you out there. And then that's what happened. And then my true self came out once I started working. I knew it was, my work ethic was high. I worked. I loved working. I didn't care what job I had. And so I cleaned toilets and mopped floors for the first 3 years out of high school. And I loved every minute of it. I still mop. I love to mop. It's a great thing. It's like therapy. Vacuuming and mopping. It's just a cool thing, you know? So I knew that I liked working. And I was very fortunate, because I felt that having that temperament of liking hard work, I always knew I had that to fall back on. If I had to work hard, I have no problem working hard. I have no problem working 7 days a week, 6 days a week. Right. So that was the confidence I had to try new things and take risks and all that.
And then, though, you've owned businesses along the way, right? We know that you're at Investors and you're the chief culture officer, but you also own businesses, right? So tell us a little bit about the businesses you owned.
So the first business was, I always wanted to be in business. So I joined the family business, which was a junkyard. We had a junkyard. And so I worked in a junkyard in Jersey City, and, you know, I drove big machines, crushing cars and, you know, recycling stuff. I did that for a while, and, you know, it was a cool business. I liked it. I liked meeting people, and we had a lot of fun, but I always wanted to own my own business. And so early on, when I first got married, we would make zucchini bread. We always liked zucchini bread. It was a family recipe, and I always said, "Man, we should sell this." And then one day I said, "You know what? We're gonna try to sell this thing." And so I went to a store in Clifton, New Jersey called Romance Emporium. It was like a the basement, the cellar at Macy's. So this was a department store just like that. It was a high-end department store, and they had a gourmet cheese wine section. And so I went there and I went to the office and I said, "Listen, I baked this bread. You want to taste it?" And the woman tasted it and she goes, "That's really good bread." She goes, "You have a bakery?" I said, "No, I have an oven in my house." She goes, "Well, how many loaves could you bake?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I guess I could bake, a couple dozen a day." She goes, "Well, let me talk to my father." And the father was there, who actually he founded the store. And he's like, I'll give you a shot." He said, "Come Saturday, bring some samples, and let's see if people like it." So my wife and I went there and we baked like 25 loaves of bread, and we had them drying on our coffee table, on our dining room table. We had them all over the house. And we went and we sold out in about 2 hours. And the guy said, "You know what? You got a winner. Give me 50 loaves by Monday." And so we rushed home. We had to go buy flour and zucchinis, and we started making it. And we went from doing it from our home to working a deal out in a local grammar school that had a kitchen that was never used. So they rented it to me at night, and I would use their ovens, and they had big mixers and stuff. And so I used that, and we went from that to buying a bakery. And we sold. In fact, one of our clients was Windows on the World. Windows on the World at the World Trade Center. They used to put our bread out with their dinners. And so we had King Supermarkets and Dean and DeLuca, Zay Bars in New York, all the gourmet stores, and local, all around. We did just the tri-state area. And so I was passionate about bread, but I knew nothing about business. I didn't know how to manage money. And so eventually I had to sell it because I just did not know. I didn't have the intellect to manage the finances well. I just had the passion and the idea. And that caught up to me. But at that point I knew all I have to do is learn that now. But I'm not afraid to take risk. And so, but that was my first business venture, and I loved every minute of it. I still might bring it back. I still might bring the zucchini bread back. I don't know, because I kept the recipe.
I feel like you've got a lot of passion behind it. As you were talking, I'm just watching you smile and you're like excited about it.
It's great to watch people eat the bread and go, "Wow, that's really good." And I say, "Well, try a little jelly or cream cheese on it." "Oh man, it's awesome." That's a good feeling to know that what you create, whether it's in presentation form or whether it's a product, it's very rewarding to see people take joy in what you create. And so that was my first taste of, wow, people really like it, and so it was good. It was good.
And that's that's amazing. And I love that, because now I want the zucchini bread, of course, and I'm hungry. But I have to say that thinking about, your evolution, and that's just up to that point, being the kid who left back, not sure what's going to happen. And then now you're feeding people at Dean and DeLuca, Windows in the World. Yeah. So I just, for those that feel like they don't know what's going to happen and they have no idea where they're heading, just kind of hanging on tight and continuing to learn.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah. I think the one thing that drove me was that I knew if I worked hard, something good will happen. I always had that. I still have that belief. If I could just not give up and work hard, the dream will come true. It may not come true exactly the way I've envisioned it, but it may be even better than what I envisioned, or it may be a little bit less. But nevertheless, I learned early on by having that experience that, dreams do come true if you work it right and you work hard. But then I also learned that you need to know more than just having a dream. And so that was a learning lesson for me. And I didn't lose anything. I just didn't, grow any further. I didn't know how to manage it. So that was good. I look back as that was a good experience. No regrets.
I've learned along the way, like we try to know everything about everything, and we can't. It's not possible. So it's okay to call in others to help you if you can't do everything, and You have
Yep.
a dream and you want to make it come true, you've got to try to talk to some other people who can help you build the foundation of that dream. That's
Yeah. I didn't do that back then.
right.
I was young and I wasn't, I had very little humility and I had a big ego. And I was like, I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. Well, yeah, I did figure it out. I had to sell it. So that was a lesson learned, is that you can't be successful alone. You need advice. And I didn't do that back then. I thought the idea was good enough, and the idea wasn't good enough. It was idea plus proper strategy, good sense of how to manage your money. And then you need more than just a good idea. And I learned that. And I look back and say, if it wasn't for that experience, it may be, I'd be finding out later on in life. That happened very early in life. So that helped me along the way.
So then you went and you owned a few other businesses, right? And then you went into motivational speaking, going out and doing presentations. So what was the turning point from owning businesses to doing that?
Well, I had a couple of different things that I did. And the next real highlight was opening a restaurant in Vermont. So I left New Jersey. I went through a real tough time in New Jersey. We decided to kind of move away and start all over again. And so I brought the family up to, in fact, this is a good story. So my wife, we went up to Vermont just to look at the leaves, to appreciate the leaves. It was September.
Right.
And I wanted to open up a restaurant because my brother had a restaurant and we worked there in the restaurant. I loved the restaurant business. So that's another great business where, I love the food you guys are making. And then it was very like social. I love that social thing. So we went up and we visited Vermont and I realized, wow, this would be a great place because there's no good Italian food up there.
Well, of course.
And my wife was like, no, we're not moving to Vermont. We're here to see the leaves. And long story short, we left Vermont and there was a restaurant that the person was retiring, which was right next door to the inn that we were staying at. And I talked to the innkeeper and I said, man, they don't have good Italian food up here. He said, well, you should come up here and open up a restaurant. I was like, I want to open up. And my wife's like, no, we're not opening up a restaurant. So he said, well, go next door and talk to the guy. He's looking to retire. And this was right on the ski resort. It was right at the ski slope. And we went there and I looked and I was like, we're going to do this. And we did it. My wife was like, okay, let's try it. She was very adventurous. And we came up and we opened up an Italian restaurant. We did that for a couple of years. And that was a great experience. But again, it's really not a business. It's a lifestyle. And it's 24/7, which I had no problem with that. But I had family, I had little kids, and they would fall asleep under the pizza oven while we were making pizzas because we didn't have time to put them to bed. And we had good Italian food, and that's good news and bad news because when you have good Italian food, it's gone every day. So every morning you got to wake up early and start all over again and make 200 meatballs and chicken cutlets and all that. So, but we did that for a couple of years, which was a great experience because I realize now that it's the principles. If you follow good principles, you could apply it to a restaurant, you could apply it to a bakery, you could apply it to a junkyard. And so we came back and I got into insurance. I started to sell insurance and I started to do seminars for parents that had young kids about saving for college education. And that's when I started to stand up in front of audiences and saying, putting your money away. And then I'd crack a joke and people would laugh. And then I'd do a motivational quote and and I was like, you know what? I like motivating more than I like selling financial products. And it kind of moved into, I read a book by the gentleman by the name of Zig Ziglar, which was the first sales book and the first really book I ever read. And he had cassette tapes and I bought one of his tapes and it was a VHS tape. And he got up there talking and jumping around the stage. And I said, you know what? Someday I'm going to do that. And so I started to study that. I read the books and then I started getting up in front of parents, talking about college education and making them laugh. And then I got into talking less about college education and making people laugh and giving them things to think about. And then I started to work for a bank selling investment products. And I started to train people about how to be a good salesman, how to self-motivate, how to make your dreams come true. And that evolved into, hey, could you do this for another part of the bank? Hey, could you do this? This was actually a PNC bank is where I really started to, they let me talk to different parts of the bank. And then from there, I just, did one little gig for nothing, another little talk for nothing. And all of a sudden I started to get invited to do national stuff. And it took, a good 10 years to build a career. And I slowed it down purposefully because I don't want to travel that much. And so the job at the bank keeps me pretty busy, and I'm obligated to put my full time into the job. So I turn away a lot of engagements. But if I wanted to, I could probably speak once a week if I wanted to somewhere. But I just don't put myself out there now. I want to really dedicate myself to the bank. But so that's how I got here. It's just kind of like all these little things just fell into place.
What are some of your favorite topics to talk about when you do presentations?
I like talking about happiness, and I like talking about optimism and the power of positive thoughts and not getting caught in negative thinking and not getting stuck there. That doesn't mean not have a negative thought, but getting stuck in the thought. And there's so much science that could be demonstrated. There's a lot of evidence that shows that we naturally lean to negative thoughts. We just lean there. If we're going to assume something, it's usually negative. If we're going to make an opinion, it's usually either neutral or negative. And so when I started to study that, I'm like, well, why is that? Why can't we just lean to positive? So I started to study that, and I realized that, well, you got to develop an optimistic mindset. So I worked very hard on doing that by reading optimistic books and all that stuff. And then I felt, well, I think my job is to go out there and help people find that alternative way of thinking. Right. And so that's what motivates me to go and do what I do. And it works. I mean, people send me emails and they'll say, hey, I saw you a year ago, and let me tell you what's happening in my life right now. Things have changed. And you said this one thing, and I don't even remember saying it, but they were like, you said this one thing, and I bought the book, and wow. And then I bought this other book, and it's just great. It's just great to have that, it feeds the mission. It feeds the dream when you see these little things coming back.
Yeah, it fills the cup for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So when I was doing this on my own, Investors Bank was my client. And so we went in there to do one group, like 20 people. They said, why don't we test this with 20 people? And so we did 20 people, and they got pretty good results, enough that they invited me back. And I said, okay, we're going to give you 20 more, and then we'll give you 20 more. And then it was a decision, why don't you do the whole bank? And there was about maybe 600, 700 employees at the time. And it took about 2 years to put everybody through. And I do 10-week programs. They're sort of like a Dale Carnegie. So we put people through. But during that process, it was clear that when I wasn't there, there was no one to drive it in the organization. And when I wasn't there, I was at another bank doing a 10-week program. Yeah, I'd go in, do my thing, and then go to another client, and I'd do my thing. So the president called me in one day and he said, hey, listen, what are you doing with your business? And I'm like, well, we're ready to sign a big contract with Commerce Bank, and we got these big things going with People's Bank. And he said, why don't you just work for me? And I'm like, well, why would I work for you? Like, I don't want to work for anybody. I have a business. And he goes, why don't we do an experiment? He said, you're telling people what to do, but you don't actually do it. You just go in there and tell them what to do. Why don't you do it? And he said, wouldn't that add value to what you do? And I'm like, and the light bulb went off, and I was like, you're a genius. That's yes. Let's negotiate. Let's figure out the finances. I have a business partner. We'll figure that out. I said, but yes, I want to try to do it, because I think I would bring more value to the marketplace by not also telling people what to do, but also saying, I did it. I know it works. Now I have evidence. It's not the book. It's personal experience. And so we did it. And I immediately realized this isn't easy. What I've been telling people was easy. It's not easy. But it's not as hard as people think. So we were going to do it just for 2 years. I said, I'm only going to do this for 2 years because I want to go back to my business. I want the independence. I want the freedom. And that was 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So I just, they allow me to experiment, and they give me the freedom to be who I am. and they allow me to experiment with different types of programs. And it's been a blast because now I am more valuable to the marketplace. I'm probably asked to talk more now because I'm beyond the vendor. I'm a culture officer, and they're like, okay, so tell me what's working. And I could say, you see the chapter in that book? Yeah, that doesn't work. But you see the next chapter? Yeah, that works. That's what worked for me. So now I could really talk about application and living it out. I'm living it out, and I'm still living it out. So it's a lot of fun. And I never thought I'd end my career this way, by having a job like this, but I feel I'm blessed. I really enjoy it.
When you say, using it as an application and it is hard, what is it that you found that, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be?
To motivate people to change themselves. Like we could say, hey, you just bring people in and you tell them how they can benefit. And you know what they do? They run out and they knock the socks off. And here's what I found out. No, they don't. They don't do that. They look at you and they go, oh yeah, that's good. And they go back and they just have a bagel. Like they don't change anything, right? And so that was very hard because the books don't explain it that way. The book will say, just do these 5 things, Chris. And then it'll give me an example of a company. This company in Texas, they did these 5 things and they increased their business by 72%. But what they don't tell you is the 25 things between each of the 5 things that they had to fix, overcome, were challenged with. That's the piece that many books don't uncover. They may not even know they exist. I had to experience it. So I had to deal with people that had higher authority than me that could say, no, I'm not doing it. My people aren't doing it either. What do I do with that? So I had to figure that out. That was my burden to figure out. And I couldn't demand it. So I had to win them over. So that's, it's probably the best education I've ever gotten was this job, because I'm working with great people that have a different way of thinking. And my job is to not to change the way they think, but to get us to meet in the middle. Can I influence the way you currently think with some of these new principles? Can you incorporate some of these new principles into your temperament, into your style? Not looking to change your style, because that's not possible, but maybe if you incorporate this into your life, it could elevate who you are. And that's the biggest challenge, but that's also the biggest aha moment for me. And so now when I talk to a vendor that comes to the bank and they'll say, hey, I have a program that's going to change your organization, I look and go, I know you believe that. But that's not true. That's not true. That you can't be saying that, because I'm living this out. When it comes to people, we make assumptions too quick. People are very, very complex, and their beliefs are deep. And the more conscientious a person is, the more they tend to hold on to what they currently believe, because they're so conscientious, they don't take risk. And so it's this drip and long-term kind of transformation that has to take place. And so I learned a lot. Now I look at situations and say, okay, that's going to take a year. That's going to take 2 years to change. Very valuable now, because I know what doesn't work. I don't know all the things that work, but I learned about a lot of things that don't work. And so I've taken half the books that I've read off my shelf, because that stuff doesn't work. And that's the real value. And that's, I don't know.
So you need to write the book then, because you know all the 25 things in between all of the 5 things, right? You're the one who has the secret sauce.
Yeah, when I retire, I'm going to write a book. I've been offered to do that probably 10 times. 10 different people said, let's write a book together. I have a person in mind that I would write a book with, but I'm not, I don't want to compromise my mission at Investors Bank. I give Investors Bank my total attention, because we have 1,800 people that I want to have a positive contribution into their life. But once that's over, then I'll go to my next mission, and that is to, how do I now create a vehicle, whether it's a book or a podcast, whatever, that I could put out there and multiply those people. But right now, I'm single focused. It's Investors Bank. It's our mission. And that's it. I don't want to split. Although I do outside stuff, but very, very little. Most of my time is spent trying to bring value to investors.
And some of the programs that you and I have talked about that you've created at Investors, they're mind blowing because you're all about morale building, but also team building in a very unique way. And I
Yeah.
love the stories when you share them with me. So can you share a couple of those projects that you've put in place to build up the team?
Yeah. So when we talk about culture, the first thing I had to do when I sat with the president, he said, "So what do we call you? Do we call you like the motivating guy?" I said, "No, I think we need more of a formal title here." So he said, "You know what I was thinking? I was thinking like culture officer." And I said, "You know what I was thinking? I was thinking chief culture officer." He said, "I like that. Let's do that." So we named, and in fact, in banking, there was no chief culture officers at any bank in the country. That didn't exist at that time. So when we put it out there, it got a lot of attention because the people like the banking magazines and stuff like that, once they realized about a year later, culture officer at a bank, it was like, wow, banks don't have culture officers. But since then, there's probably 30 culture officers in major banks right now because it brought attention to the fact that culture is important. But I had to study culture. I had to figure out what does that really mean? And what it boils down to is the culture. The foundation of culture is the mindset of the individual. So we have 1,700 employees. There's 1,700 individual cultures coming to work,
Right.
and we're trying to work together, and we're trying to achieve something that benefits the organization. So it's really, culture is a set of beliefs that people have, and then they come together and they share those beliefs and work within those beliefs. So my job was to elevate what people believe and what they think. And so there's three words that is kind of my foundation. That's hope, optimism, and happiness. If I could bring hope to people within their career and what they do for the bank and what they could do in the future, if I could bring hope, then that hope creates optimism today. People feel good because they're hopeful of the future. So if I'm going to have an optimistic workforce, then I have to figure out ways to bring hope. We could work better together. Our teams could fix their problems, and all that stuff. All these little things that create hopeful futures. And then the last part, if you do the hope and the optimism right, then you have happy employees. They feel good coming to work. And so I had to come up with activities that could spark hope and optimism. And then I had to come up with activities that could constantly feed it. So we do events like a lot of volunteer events. And before I got there, the volunteer events were like, okay, we're going to collect eyeglasses or we're going to collect money. And my thought was, well, we could continue to do that. And we do that. But I wanted to get people to actually volunteer together and do things together. So we do Habitat for Humanity. We'll do comfort cases with Rob Shear. I know you're going to be interviewing him where, we'll raise money and collect items to put in comfort cases to give to foster children. We go to a farm in Hunterdon County called America's Grower Row. Well, I'll bring teams of people and we'll spend the day in the farm harvesting corn or potatoes or squash for inner city produce free markets to feed people that can't afford to buy fresh produce. And what happens is that shared experience, because we're humans, it just brings people together. So when I do these events, I usually bring teams that they don't work well together. Like here's two teams that maybe because of the nature of what they do, they just don't work well together, like salespeople and compliance people. Right. So compliance people are looking for reasons to protect the bank, but the salesperson thinks you're looking for reasons not to make the sale. And so there's this there's this kind of stress within that relationship. But you put the two groups out in the field and you pair them up strategically, and now they're working together towards something that's greater than their issue. And they come back with arms around each other and mud on their face. And they're like, oh, that was great. Transformation. And so my job is to look for creative ways to get people to appreciate people beyond their title, beyond the department they work for, and realize that we have more in sync than we do that's different. We're more alike than we are different. I have two kids, you have two kids. I'm married, you're married. You love your mom and dad. I love like we realize, wow, we have so much to say. Why do we fight, right? And so that's been working extremely well. And then I do a motivational email every day to every employee, 6 days a week, called the Morning Juice. And that we've been doing that for 7 years, every day, never missed a day. And it's that start your day with something positive to consider, think about. And so if we could affect the way people think, we affect the way they feel, and that affects how they behave and the activities they do. And we do a lot of things in between, like concerts with your group. Yes. So we created a band, the Investors Band, which at the time was a live band, and we invited your group and your students in to sing on stage with us. And we would have these live concerts of bank employees and Zach's kids, and we would have people come in and pay $5 to listen to us, and we would raise thousands of dollars for Ronald McDonald House, pantries and soup kitchens around the state. Again, it was an activity that everyone could share. Even the audience was proud to be there, because it's like, that's my colleague singing to raise money for Ronald McDonald House. I'm so proud to be here at Investors Bank. So, and we continue to think of new things, so that's some of the activities.
And we're honored that you've supported the Zach J. Uploader Kids Foundation, and you've had us a part of many different events and virtually, right? So we've done some virtual things together too.
And we got more stuff lined up. I haven't even talked to you about for this year, but the virtual thing, I think it was a big hit, because we did get a lot of people on, and when we did live concerts, we'd get 200-300 people. We did the virtual event. We actually had, by viewers, 1,200 viewers. We can never do that in person. So we're going to continue to do that and bring music into the homes, bring joy into the homes, and have your students get on stage and live their dream out and prepare themselves for the future. And I love the organization, because the bank and me personally, I just am so sensitive towards kids. Anything that we could do for children, we should do. And the bank is very they're like, Dennis, just do your thing. But we do it all around the bank. I'm not the only one that does things for kids. I mean, we have different departments sponsoring different programs, and it's probably the most active part of our bank when it comes to our foundation is organizations related to children.
And I just want to mention that it's because of the generosity of you and investors. We've through that, we've supported and been able to put multiple children in who could never afford to take acting, dancing, singing lessons for, multiple years. So what it gives to them is it's just unbelievable. And you've gotten to see that firsthand just by.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're doing, our relationship is 4 or 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yes.
I remember some of the kids when they were little singing, and now they're 5 years older and their voices are more mature, and they have 5 years of practice under their belt, and they're just getting better and better. Watch your daughter grow. And it's just a great experience, but that's what it's about. That's the joy.
Absolutely, it is. It absolutely is. And the programming that you're doing, not every organization, as you said, has a cultural officer.
Right.
And in some organizations, I'm sure you know this firsthand, there is a true lack, and I'm sorry to say it, but there is a true lack of communication amongst the people within the organization, and they don't necessarily always feel like they have the money or the budget to hire someone like yourself.
Right.
I think that we can honestly say from this conversation and from what you've experienced, it is worth finding the dollars to hire somebody in that space.
Yeah. So you bring up a good point, because it's ignorance that hurts companies. So they're smart about their business. So if they build houses, they know how to build houses. If they're a bank, they know how to be bankers. But there's an assumption that I have a title and I know it all. And I just giggle and say, no, you don't. No, you don't. You know nothing. You know your job. That's it. I put you in a hospital. You wouldn't know what to do. I put you in a bakery. You wouldn't know how to bake. You wouldn't know how to bake. You know how to do banking. Or if I take a baker and put him in a bank, they wouldn't know what to do. So but when it comes to people, there's an assumption that happiness doesn't matter.
Right.
That is an absolute ignorance of a basic life principle. And this isn't new stuff. This goes back 6,000 years. It's not like it's new age. This is the human spirit. And if you want to get more out of people, and I'm not saying in a greedy way, Like I'm paying you this, but I want more than I'm paying. People want to do their best. People feel good when they do more than what's expected. So if you ask me for 2 and I give you 3, I feel good about that. Like I feel like, wow, I really am earning my position. I like being a good performer. Most people feel that way. So happiness is that emotion that allows that to manifest. It puts me in the mood to go beyond and to risk and to go beyond my comfort zone. So there's this belief that you'll be happy if you reach your goal. Mm-hmm. But that's not true. Mm-mm. What the science is saying is, if I could make you happy and optimistic and hopeful now, you're more likely to reach your goal, because you'll stick with the obstacles and the pain and the struggle to reach your goal. You're more likely to stick with it because you have positive energy inside. You're not so willing to give up. Now, that science was new 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It's common sense today. So if a company is still stuck in that, well, I don't believe that, well, good for you, but you're not right. You're not right. Just because you don't believe it doesn't mean you're right. You're wrong. You don't believe it. And hopefully it doesn't affect your business. And it may not affect their business, but when you're talking about a big corporation that has all different generations and all different nationalities and all different people coming together from all over the world, feeling important, feeling appreciated, having a sense of happiness and hope and optimism drives results. There's no doubt about that. In fact, I have a book.
I was looking at that one.
Yeah. So this is called The Happiness Advantage. And so this talks about the case study or the business case of happiness driving results. And it's written by Sean Aker, who is a college professor at Harvard. And he taught corporate happiness, and he wrote this book. And I did a program, a leadership program. I still do. But when I first introduced this book to the leadership program in Pennsylvania, there was about 32 banks. This is a C-level 2-year program that I facilitate. And you have to, you're either a chief financial officer, a chief operating officer, or the CEO or the president. That's the level that go to this course. And I emailed the book to them. They haven't met me yet in person. So I sent the book to all their homes and said, this is the pre-work. So read the first chapter. Here's the outline. Here's the assignment of what I want you to do with the information from the chapter. And then when we meet, the first thing we'll do is debrief what we've read so far. And the organization called me up and said, we have 2 people that want to sign out. What book did you send them? I said, The Happiness Advantage. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2 people, they didn't want to take the class. They think they signed up for their own class. I said, well, just call them up and ask them if they read the book. They probably didn't read the book. If they read the book, they'll understand that this is the missing link. And so she did convince them. She said, just read the first chapter. And then after you read the first chapter, if you still want to sign out, we'll give you your money back. And nobody signed out. And when we got to class, the first class, I went around a room and it was unanimous. The response was, when I got the book, I was like going, what does this have to do with banking? Happiness. I got through the first 3 pages and realized, oh, wow, we don't pay attention to this. And this is really important. And it really changed banking in Pennsylvania because they realized the way people feel matters. You can't tell people leave your feeling in a parking lot. First of all, that's biologically impossible. And I would always tell a leader, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you try it, learn it, and then teach me how to do it, because you can't do it. And so that's something that I think is something that you do. You bring joy and happiness into people's lives. And that's the goal of a chief culture officer. We're not there to have picnics. We're not there to have lunch and learns, although that's part of it. Right. That's not the real spirit of it. The real spirit is to help people find a more optimistic, happier, and more hopeful journey in their career and in their lives, and share that with their family. So it's really it's beyond the title. It's a people position, and it's very rewarding. And now I have a lot of advocates in the bank. I mean, people just are doing their own thing with their staff, and coming up with creative ways to just build off of what I'm trying to build. So they're doing things beyond what I'm even thinking of, which is great because that's what you want to see it come alive. So
the juices are flowing, and and that's that's a good thing.
Yeah.
There's 2 points that as you're talking, I jotted down that I want to make sure I mentioned, which was if an organization out there has a tremendous amount of turnover, and I know a few of them myself,
Right.
that is where you need to start thinking about the culture of the organization, and you have to have that heart to heart with yourself if you're the leader. As to am I right on that? Is that you need to have a heart to heart with yourself if you're the leader to say, what am I doing wrong culturally here that I need to change?
Yeah, we just had a conversation at the bank about this very topic. So when people leave, and you ask a person, why are you leaving? Well, I found another job. That's the number one answer.
Mm-hmm.
I found another job. It pays more. That's not the right question, right? The right question is, when did you start considering leaving? When did this start to happen? I know you're leaving now, but when did this start? Tell me what got you in the mood to start looking.
Mm-hmm.
And when I said that to the human resource person, she's like, I never asked that question before my whole career. I've been doing this for 40 years. When did you start looking for a new job? Well, it started about a year ago. Wow. Why? What happened a year ago that got you to realize? Now, it may be my wife got sick and she can't work. And I know the limitations here at the bank that I can't get to that salary level. And so I had to start looking. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
But that's minimal. It's usually, I don't see a way to grow here. You people hire within, it's all political. So the story comes out. Right. It's not like, why are you leaving? Like, where are you going? I don't really care where you're going, right? Obviously, you're going to find another job and good for you. But I'm more interested in, you joined us. You wanted to work here. What was that day that got you to make that decision? You don't want to work here anymore? Because it usually takes 6 months, 7 months to find a job, right? So what happened? And usually it's lack of, I'm not going to say appreciation, but lack of feeling like you matter.
Yes.
And I don't need a raise to feel like I matter. I need to be listened to. I need for my manager to show that they care about me. They need to ask me how I'm doing. It's important to me when people ask, how was your weekend? How are your children? I want to feel like if I have a comment, my manager makes sure that my comment is made. They don't have to follow through, but I feel like I'm contributing. Now I'm talking about middle to high performers. I'm not talking about all employees. There are employees that don't care, but they're usually the middle to low performers that don't care about that stuff. So what I'm talking about is losing high performers. High performers care about feeling like they're heard, feeling like they matter, like they're significant, not invisible. And that the company has a solid core of a set of values that I can associate and believe in. What does the company stand for? And well, we stand for the environment. We stand for helping a community. We stand for doing the right thing. We stand for curing people. Whatever that stand is, people usually join. They join an organization, but part of that decision to join the organization, I'm talking about middle to high performers now.
Right.
Who is this company? What are they trying to achieve? Is it all about the money? I don't know if that's the career path I want to take. I want to work for a company that means more to themselves, like they have a mission beyond the money. And I think that's one of the things that investors has as the secret weapon is that we stand for culture and we stand for community first.
Mm-hmm.
And people come because they say it's about the culture and your commitment to the community. It's not because you have a better computer system. And it's certainly not because you pay a lot more. Because we don't, right? We're just like a bank. We're no cheaper or no more generous than any other bank. We're kind of in the middle. The bank has certain parameters of what it pays, but people come because of what the bank's reputation of culture, commitment to the community, and that's why people join. That's why people stay.
Right.
So, but I think people join a company, but they leave their supervisor or they leave the culture.
Yes.
I joined the company, but I'm leaving the culture. I don't like the culture. It's too much backstabbing. No one backs each other, like all that stuff that goes on. So culture if you get a good culture officer, their job is to figure out what is the emotional state of the organization and what's contributing to that emotional state. And so when I first got here, I interviewed like 200 people. The first year and a half I was here, I just sat with people and say, tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're feeling. And, they would answer the first 5 questions. And then I'd say, now I'm going to shut the door and I'm going to ask you those questions again. And the answers are different. And people have feelings that are pent up. And then you take those feelings and you see, okay, what are some of the layups? What are some of the things that we could address right away that we could alter so that people know that we care? So we have core values posted, but people are more intelligent to realize I don't care what's on the corporate wall. I care about what's being demonstrated that I'm feeling. I don't feel what's on that corporate wall. So when a president says, hey, we care about you. No, you don't. No, you don't. I'm not listening. When Kevin Cummings says we care about you, I could bet you, I could count on one hand with people that maybe don't believe that because of maybe the way they're wired. But we care about employees. I mean, the fact that I'm there and I have a team and other things that we do around the bank, and we're allowed to support organizations like you, demonstrates every day we care beyond the profit. And that's important. So I took a long way to answer your question, but if people are leaving, it's not because they found another job, and it's usually not for pay. All the evidence shows people usually don't leave for pay unless they experience some traumatic hardship, like a spouse loses their job or something like that. And that's so minimal. That's not a lot.
Right.
But when that happens, you could understand.
Absolutely. And I think that lends into the point I wanted to make, because we're in this very difficult time right now, right? With COVID and the pandemic, and it's just been a tough time all the way around. And 2020 was tough, and 2021 is not starting any different. So doing things the way that leaders are used to doing them, really, that's not effective anymore. We have to change and roll with the times. And I know you have a story that I got the opportunity to share about a ham, which was a really great story, but it lends itself into really having to think differently now. And what is your advice to leaders? And if you want to share a little bit about that story as well.
Yeah, when I first got married, my wife was cooking a fresh ham, right? And I remember looking at it going, what is that? She's like, well, that's a ham. And I'm like, well, where's the can? Ham comes in a can, because my mom bought a canned ham. And she goes, no, it's a fresh ham. And so she's ready to prepare it to put it in the oven, and she cuts a portion of the ham off, kind of the end of the ham. She cuts that heel off there, and she's getting it ready. And I'm like, well, why are you cutting that off? She goes, well, we always cut it off. It's just makes it cook better. Or I don't remember exactly, but she said, that's what my mom always does. And my grandmother always does. We always cut the end of the ham off. And so I remember talking to her grandmother and said, hey, Gigi, why do you cut the end of the ham off? She goes, oh, yeah, we did that for years. Years ago, our oven was too small. And so we could never fit a full-size fresh ham. So we always had to cut the end of the ham off so the door would shut. She goes, you just get used to doing it. Now we redid the kitchen. I have a bigger oven, but I still cut the end of the ham off, right? And so it's interesting, that story, because I was doing a presentation out in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I was sharing that story. And it was a smaller group, and we were at round tables, and it was open. Like if somebody wanted to make a comment, I was like, yeah, make a comment. So the woman raised her hand. She goes, I heard that story before. She goes, you're stealing someone's story. And I said, well, this is my story, but maybe someone else has the same story. And so that's all that happened at that workshop. But as I was driving home, I Googled it. And that's a common story.
Oh.
Because you had to cut the end of the ham off years ago because the ovens were not big. That was a traditional thing to do because the ham was always bigger than the oven. And there are many grandmas out there that still continue to cut the end of the ham off to fit it in a larger oven. So it wasn't just my wife's grandmother that did that. That's a pretty common thing for people that are used to doing it because they had to. And I like that illustration because we continue to do things that worked in the past. and we fight hard to make it work now. Instead of just changing the technique and learning a new way of doing it, we struggle with, wow, well, maybe it'll work this time. Maybe it'll work this time. And no, it's not going to work anymore. It's not effective. You don't need to do that. You need to learn a new way to cook a ham. And so that's a struggle for many leaders, because they look at this and say, but I've gotten this far. We're so successful using these principles. I know, but in all fairness to the shareholders, if you continue this journey, your company's going to be less effective in the future. Now, you may be retiring in 2 years. And so you may say, hey, I'm not going to learn something new for the next 2 years. But bring someone in that could start making these subtle changes now while you're still here. Be the advocate for this, knowing that I got this far, and what do we need to do to take the company even further? And I've worked for many organizations that took that approach. They said, yeah, I don't think I get this new way of doing it, but I'm not going to argue it. You're probably right. I need to get someone now. I need to hire someone that understands that. And I need to give them some flexibility to start instituting some of these new things. So I think right now it really has momentum, this whole movement of employee engagement or optimism in the workplace and all that. I mean, you pick up any business publication and there's going to be an article in there related to this some way, shape, or form. So it's becoming real common practice. But the how to get it accomplished is still, it's a struggle, because there's not many people that are doing it as long as I've been doing it, and other people in the business have been doing it. I'm doing it for 10 years now. So I got a call from someone from a big bank, and they said, I was given your name and I got a job as the chief culture officer for an international bank. I said, well, good for you. What's your background? She goes, I was a salesperson. They gave me the job. I don't know what I'm doing. So what do I do? Do I do like picnics or something? Is that my job? I'm like, and I said, here's 5 books you need to read. And so, it's not about that. And so what's happening is just having a person do it and have a couple of, potluck lunches and stuff like that. That's so little of what contributes to a healthy culture. Who's a good company to look at for culture is Zappos Shoes. Okay. Zappos Shoes is something I really studied them and said, okay, what are they doing within their organization that drives this culture of happiness? And they use the word happiness. Tony Hsieh, who had just recently passed away, but young guy, and he on the book, on the box, when you get shoes from Zappos, it doesn't say shoes delivered. It says happiness delivered. So he took that word happiness and he said, if our employees are really happy, enthusiastic, and feel good about what they do and who they do it for, then our customers are going to feel that energy and they're going to be excited about who they're buying their shoes from. And so that worked well for them. Right. And it continues to work well for them. So I studied him and said, okay, that's a good model. Although he sells online shoes and products like that, we're selling bank products. There's not that much of a difference. And so I use that a lot to create that enthusiasm within departments. Let's blow some balloons up. Let's play some music. Let's play some games. Let's have some fun within this boring building. And so, so last year when I think it was Bring Your Kids to Work Day, and we had everybody bring their kids to work. And we told each department that we're going to give out trophies for the department that comes up with the craziest decorations for your department. Oh. And they went way out. One department actually created a space tunnel where they got drapes and they draped it and they put glow lights inside. You had to walk through and employees were dressed as aliens. Like they created, I mean, they went way out. I mean, this was like way over the top. One was a jungle and people were dressed up as different animals. They went way out. So I figured, okay, so I have to dress up. So I dressed up as Mr. Incredible. And so I went around and took pictures with the kids. So this is a one-day event, but every department took a ton of pictures and they put them up in their departments. And they were like, this is why I love the bank. Because they care enough about us and our family that they would allow us to do this and allow us to buy the materials to do this. What did it cost us? A couple $100 a department. But the memories last for 365 days until we do Bring Your Kids to Work Day again, right? And that's the same thing like working with your organization. It's a happy memory of who we are as a company. And my job as a culture officer is to create an inventory of memories that people could look back on and say, that's why I continue to stay here, because of all the great things and all the great memories that the organization brought into my life for me and my kids. And we'll do picnics and we'll rent a lake. And 2 years ago, we rented a lake and we had 2,000 people come and they swam in the lake, and we had free cotton candy and free hamburgers all day and hot dogs and corn on the cob. We had a concert that night, and it was just, people still talk about, the lake barbecue. So I think companies, if they read this book, and there's other books out there like this, they start to realize that the energy, the positive energy that comes from optimism and happiness and hope is the very ingredient that's needed to create high performers in whatever they do. If they process paperwork, they become a high performing, optimistic, enthusiastic person that processes paperwork. And that minimizes mistakes. People like working with that person. They're quick to solve a problem when there's a problem. They work well with their partners. Everything that we want out of employees comes from that foundation of temperament. If people feel they're working under pressure, if they feel unappreciated, if they feel disengaged, how could they be their best?
Right.
They're not. They're just not going to do it. So.
And you're going to see turnover, and you're going to see problems internally amongst staff. And it's such a simple thing, right? Happiness. And it doesn't seem like it's this, but the truth is that in business, a lot of times they say, well, there's no emotion in business, right? Business is business, but that's not. You've just
That's not true.
Why that is so untrue. And
I'll share a story about the medical industry. There's a story about. There's a case study about, and this was actually I got to remember the book, but it was in one of those I think it was Working with Emotional Intelligence. They shared a story, and I actually met people from the organization in California, Kaiser Healthcare, and they're the biggest healthcare provider in California. And so I read the story, and then I went to do a seminar, and there were people from Kaiser there, and we started talking, and they told me about this situation. A woman went into, she had breast cancer, and she went to get her breast removed, and her primary doctor indicated the wrong breast. So they took the wrong breast off.
Oh my God.
So she had to go back in and get the other one removed. So absolutely slam dunk lawsuit. You don't want to go to court with that. It's going to cost you millions of dollars. And it's like such a heartbreaking story, right? And it was a young person. And the attorneys, she had an attorney, and attorneys were probably bunking into each other trying to get the case because that was a slam dunk, right? And she wanted to sue the anesthesiologist. She did not want to sue her primary doctor. And they were confused. They were like, well, wait a minute. The anesthesiologist only gave you anesthesia. They had nothing to do. Oh, no, they did. He should have picked up the mistake. That's his job. People make mistakes every day, but he's sitting there and he could see the breast that's circled. He should have double checked to make sure it was the right one before they cut. Sue him. I don't like him. He had an attitude. Oh. Now, she didn't want to sue the primary doctor. And when they questioned her, they said, well, what is it about the primary doctor? She goes, no, I love that guy. Guy comes to my house. He delivered my baby. He's a sweetheart. He was my mom's doctor. He's like family. I'm not hurting him. But that anesthesiologist, sue him. Now that opened up a big Pandora's box for the industry, because they're like, now, wait a minute. How many cases are actually being done like this? How many people are not suing because they like their doctor? And they found that doctors that had a strong emotional relationship with their clients, with their patients, and treated them like a person, not like an it, was sued far less. Yet they made the same amount of mistakes. They were sued far less. And that brought attention to the fact that being emotionally intelligent and treating people like people, you'll have a better client, patient doctor relationship, but will be sued less. because we're going to make mistakes. We're not perfect. And so they put every employee, even the janitors, through emotional intelligence training. And so that's why hospitals now are more people oriented, because the better the relationship, the happier the relationship, when something goes bad, it doesn't necessarily have to be sued for millions. Maybe we could settle for a lot less. Well, just cover my expenses and we'll call it a day. I don't need to sue you for $1 zillion, right? And so when we look at the power of optimism and feeling appreciated and having those positive relationships, it manifests into the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, in teaching and all that stuff. I mean, it's universal. It's not just in sales and in business, but it's in relationships and everything else. Yeah, it's very powerful stuff. And so that's why now I'm, when we talk about this stuff, I'm very confident, so that when I do listen to someone that has a different opinion, thank you. It's never that they know more. It's that they don't know. And so I always take the approach, well, I appreciate how you feel, but you probably should read this book if you really want to learn. Now, if you don't want to learn, then I think you're going to suffer the consequences down the road, but that's your choice to make.
Yeah. And you've put in the time, you've put in the effort to learn. You've been you're in it every single day. You're learning with your employees.
Excuse me.
And so those things make you have the understanding very different than someone who is now a chief cultural officer, a culture officer, that is a salesperson who's just coming in for the first day and doesn't really know. I mean, I learn a lot from you. I hope that others will listen to this who are leaders, who are, in the same position as you. And I know they will learn something. You have to be open, as you know, in order to learn something. You can't be closed off and think you know everything, because then, you won't learn anything.
Excuse me.
No, you're fine.
I'm allergic to the end of the podcast. I don't want to.
You don't want to. Well, don't you worry, because I plan on having you back, and I think we're going to have some fun with a couple of people that that you've introduced me to. So I'm really excited.
I'm looking forward to that.
But my last question that I ask everybody, which is a really important one, is: if I knew then what I know now, what would that be, Dennis?
The importance of self-education. I started late in life, and it got me, I shouldn't be here. I never went to college. I just about got out of high school, and I'm teaching at Penn State University leadership. I shouldn't be doing that, right? So I look back and say, that's what 15, 20 years of reading. I got this far. Could you imagine if I had 30 years of reading, how much further I would have went? So it's not a regret, because I'm I'm just so blessed and happy to be at the point in my life that I'm at. But I could look back and say, yeah, pick up the book. You don't have to like it. I did a workshop yesterday for Chamber of Commerce, and the person said, you must love reading. And I went, are you nuts? Reading? I hate reading. You think I like reading? She goes, you read books. No. I don't read books because I like to read. I hate reading. I wish there was another way to get the information into my head. But I'm doing something I don't like because I like the reward I get from doing it. And so the reward is much bigger than the sacrifice I have to make doing something I don't like. But I really don't like reading.
I have audiobooks?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Do you do audiobooks at all, or you're not? I can't do them.
After I read the book.
Okay.
After I read the book, then I'll do the audio to just refresh my memory. But I like bending pages. I like highlighting. I like circling. I like putting stars. I have this little code thing. If I put 4 stars on a page, it's a really important page. But 5 stars is like, whoa, rip that page out. That's a good one, right? So I have this little code going on, but I love the smell of the book. I love opening it and closing it. I like seeing the cover. But if I knew in school that reading was important and how it would affect the life, I never made the connection. I could easily make it now because I wouldn't be here without having the knowledge. Here's what I did find out. When I'm in a room, I'm one of only a few people that actually read a lot.
Yes.
That's the advantage. People don't want to read. And people will say, I'll pay you to teach my people what you read, because I don't want to read it. I'll pay you to do it. And I'm like, I could build a business around that. I'll read the book and I'll transfer the information and I'll get paid to do it. And that's basically what we do. There's a lot of new stuff to learn. There's a lot of new science that's coming out around motivation and biochemistry and the food we eat. And so I'm taking that new journey. How do I incorporate that into better health? How do I incorporate what we eat and how it affects our performance? And there's a lot of good science around that. And so I'll continue to take that journey and learn as much as I can. And I love it now, but I don't like reading. I probably will never like reading, but I love the benefits that I get from it.
And thank you for sharing that, because I know a lot of people who will say, oh, did you read that book? And they'll be like, oh, no, I don't. I hate reading. And so that's just kind of their excuse for, I'm not going to do it. We hate doing a lot of things during the day, right? But we have to do it.
Yeah.
And this makes you, like you say, not necessarily the smartest person in the room, but a person who has the benefit of a little bit more knowledge than some of the others.
That's it. All you need is a little bit. That makes you competitive edge. There's a great book out there called Change Anything. The first chapter of the book is 6 steps. Step number 1, do the things you hate doing. Fall in love with the things you hate. And your life will change. Well, I hate making phone calls. Fall in love with that. Find a way to fall in love with that. I hate reading. I know. Find a way to fall in love with that, because you're not the only one who hates reading. Most of the world hates reading. Most of the world hates making phone calls. But if you can just like it a little bit more than most people and do it, your competitive edge. And that's what separates all performers. They do things most people don't want to do. They could do it. They just don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's very, very, very true. And thank you for sharing about that, the adventure of school, because I have just kind of started sharing about the fact that I didn't graduate college myself. Went for some, but didn't finish. And I too have had experiences where I shouldn't be where I am. But because of determination and tenacity, that's the way we get to where we do with or without that degree. But you and I both could not go on to Indeed today and click the bachelor's degree that's mandatory in, yet with all of our life experience, we could not apply for certain jobs that have nothing might be a lower title than we have now. So it's the way society has made it difficult for those like you and I.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a presentation for doctors at Centra State Hospital.
Sure, I know them well.
And I'm sitting there like waiting to talk, and I'm like, what am I doing here? These people have like 20 years of education and all this stuff, and they're going to sit there and take notes, and I'm saying, write that down, and the person come up to me, one of the people come up to me and said, so what's your alumni? And I said, Dickinson. He said, oh yeah, my brother-in-law went there and it's a good school. I said, yeah, it's a great school. He said, did you know this professor? And I said, well, we didn't call them professors. We called them teachers. He said, oh. He said, well, did you know this? No. Now, what campus did you go to? Well, we didn't call it a campus. We called it a school. He said, well, wait a minute. Fairleigh Dickinson, right? I said, no, Dickinson High School, Jersey City. He's like, oh, no, I meant your alumni. I know. That's my alumni. That's the school I went to. And he's like, look at me go, and this is a lunch and learn, and I'm here to listen to you. And so I said, I asked him, because we were talking over coffee, and I said, how do you feel about my background? He said, I was surprised because the way the bio is reading, I'm assuming that you have you're a psychologist or something like that. Nope. I just read a lot of books and I have a lot of experience. But no, I'm not at that level. But what I do know, I think will be helpful. So maybe I'm going to say something today that you could say, you know what, maybe I could try that at home. And it was interesting because when we were done, he come up to me, he says, well, you sound like you went to college. I said, well, I don't know. I guess that's a compliment, but thank you. I said, but did you learn anything today? He said, yeah, I picked up 3 things that I could use at work and I could use at home. This was really great. Thank you so much. So yeah, I think that our story is encouraging for people that didn't finish school because of all different reasons, but that can't stop you from living your dream. Now, there's certain things you can't do if you don't go to school. You can't be a brain surgeon. I get it. And if you're not tall enough, you can't play basketball. But that doesn't mean you can't work for a basketball organization and still be in a place that you love to be. So I can't sing, but I could certainly set the stage up and put a program together, and that's part of the concert. So we find our way.
We sure do. We sure do. And Dennis, I want to make sure that you know that I want you to come back. You're going to be back. You're going to be a co-host with me, which I'm excited about coming up for Rob Shear, which will be so much fun, and maybe some others. So I'm excited for you to continue to share your expertise with us on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate this opportunity. This was fun. I'm sorry if I talk too much.
Are you kidding me? You need to, because you have all the good stuff. You've got all the nuggets that people want to hear from. And it doesn't matter what your level of school is. It's all about what you can share from your heart. You know, that's a big part of I think of knowledge, right? I really do.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for giving your time and your expertise today.
Thank you.
We'll see you again soon. And as I always say at the very end, because this is so important, remember that today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what steps are you taking today to get you closer to your goal? We'll see you next week, and have a fabulous day. Bye, Dennis. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you.